Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Staying Strong for Marriage. It's good to see you guys. I'm really excited. So I just had my 6th year of standing, my 6th year anniversary. I want to give you guys a rundown of what it's like, especially for new folks, and to hear from those of you who've been at it for a while to see what similarities we had. I'm going to work through it. I try to do a positive word for each year as kind of a synopsis idea, but especially for new people to think about, I think many of us, we feel like, is what I'm facing just, has anyone else gone through it? Normally it is, but I want to make a video so as a little celebration. Okay, also, there's nothing to really see here. I'm not going to do graphs or pictures, so if you want to go for a run, save this for when you go for a walk. There you go. So year one, I entitled it Survive. The goal is just to survive. I think that's how most people see it. If you go through the initial separation, you may feel a time of calm or release, or like relief, just peace, everything. It's like I'm not fighting, like, whew, I just don't have all that going on. But I remember James Dobson in Love Must Be Tough. He says as soon as someone drops the divorce bomb, the divorce trigger, they decide that's what they're going to do and they let you know. Pretty much what sets in is panic and anxiety. And some of the things I wrote down, it's like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? Are they even saved? What can I do? Is there anything I can do? You kind of have the refusal to believe it's even happening. It doesn't seem real. You start to do some of those early stages of grief, like bargaining with God, or maybe with them. You're saying, hey, maybe we can get that house. Maybe, let's talk about kids again. Like, let's just not burn this whole thing down. Well, let's see. Come on, like, don't quit. And that usually doesn't work. Usually people are pretty far gone by the time they say, hey, I'm out. And there's like a lot of things that they've got like built up against you. So probably bargaining with them doesn't work, but a lot of people try it. One thing I did, I needed to change small groups. Basically, I realized that the people, as much as they loved me and were kind of good to me, they were just not going to be able to really understand what I was going through. So I went to divorce care, and that was super great. I found some great people there that ended up becoming long-term friends. Also, I realized that some of my early ideas of divorce or remarriage came to the surface. So, like, it didn't take me long to put my ring back on and be like, I don't agree with this, and I'm not going along with it. So, you're going to run into all those should I sign divorce papers or not or whatever. The other thing that creeps in is that you start questioning everything. Did I marry the wrong person? Maybe I should have done this thing or that thing differently, and I wouldn't have come up with this scenario. The cool thing is when you move into year two, which I said digging deep, you're basically going deep with God. You have a lot of trauma and a lot of hurt, and you're kind of alone in a large degree. You have people that are there to support you, but really you walk through the valley of the shadow of death by yourself. It's the death of your marriage, or so it feels like. It's not really dead in my opinion, but it certainly feels like that. And it's just a lot of grief that you continue to deal with. It's not anxiety as much anymore. It's maybe frustration, it's anger, it's loneliness, it's betrayal. So the emotions change, but they're very raw, they're very real. You're still praying, you're still interceding. You're maybe not to like a deep level of spiritual warfare, but you're still kind of like pleading with God, just simple like, God, please help me. I think the cool thing in year two is that you take those people that you found in year one as you were looking for help and resource people. You've kind of identified who those are going to be, and you've kind of brought them in. You have a deeper relationship with those people at that point, and that's really nice. It starts to pay off. I thought about the book Life Together by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It's not a difficult read, and you could pick it up, but I would say you're trying to get to that kind of level of intimacy, healthy intimacy with people as you go through this trial together. And there's some criticism about divorce care. I did a video on that. You can check it out and get my full thoughts. But all in all, I thought it was good to do that. I will say Facebook doesn't qualify, in my opinion. Technically, sitting in your house or in your room on your phone on Facebook, even if you're on a marriage support group, is still technically isolating. These are not your real friends. These are your computer friends, Like, it's different. And so you need to have like real people who you can, hang out with, get coffee with, go to work with, go over to their house, help them with this, meet their kids, do whatever. Basically, the cool thing about year two is, like it or not, the bargaining is kind of over. You kind of come to accept, like, this is happening. This probably isn't going to change in the near future. So I have no other choice but to rebuild my life. And how do I want to do that? So you've had some time to think about that in year one. In year two, you really start to clarify that. And you have now, like, the wherewithal to really make some bigger decisions. I also started taking Arabic courses at the University of Florida. And so the fog was lifting. I was meeting people. I was getting back into shape. It was an awful year, to be quite honest. But it wasn't totally awful. I was seeing like an upward projection, and that was good. I'm learning to rely on God for my emotions and that trauma. I'm moving into year three, and this year it was busy for me, like very busy. So I called it the project build out type of year. So, I was continuing my Arabic study. I was studying this GMAT exam to go to graduate school. I was working at one position with the government. I was running my own business on the side. I was preparing to move overseas. And I was just all the time. It was full go. Energy was back. I had time to work. I wasn't really thinking that much about theology or my marriage restoration theology or anything like that. I was basically focused on my career. I had done my research. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to business school. I knew where I wanted to do that. And I was on my way, baby. So at that point, I was pretty excited. By year four, I'm actually living in Beirut at this point in Lebanon. And I entitled year four is like living your dreams and the crossroads. So the crossroads, what I mean is it really clicked for me that all the controversy I was reading on these blogs and stuff about marriage, divorce, and remarriage was essentially centered on the idea of the fifth point of Calvinism about maintaining your walk with God, not sabotaging your salvation, but maintaining an obedience to God in what He's called people to do. And, I'm not saying believe this or don't believe this. I'm just saying I realized during that year what people were basically getting at. They're basically saying if you remarry while your spouse is alive, you're in adultery, and adulterers aren't going to inherit the kingdom of heaven. And so this is a real eternal type of thing that we're talking about here. It's not just about marriage, it's really about salvation. See, up to that point, I had not clued in on that. I hadn't realized that's what people were saying. I just thought there was a bunch of weirdo people talking like, oh, I'm trying to save my spouse. Well, now in that year, it finally made sense. This was the year that I started staying strong for marriage. This was the year that I started looking into the theology stuff about once saved, always saved. And so you can check out a video that I did on that. It's intense. I mean, very intense. But it helped me. It helped me come to realize what I thought about that scenario. Was I going to remarry or not? And once I was able to understand that, I was no longer double-minded. And I had a lot more just peace. Okay, the road that I'm going to walk is going to be difficult, but I'm not double-minded. At least I know where I'm going and what I'm going to do. So that was very nice. Basically, people are at a crossroads on this point. Either they're going to decide to stand for their marriage and implement a lot of the things that I talk about on this channel, or people are going to say, no, that doesn't, those aspects of like unrepentance, living in sin, being unfaithful, living in unforgiveness or unbelief, that's not idolatry. Like that doesn't have anything to do with deviating from what God said and going doing my own plan. A lot of people say that's not what remarriage is. So you could see, depending on where you fall on that, it's going to dictate to you where you go from that point. So it is a major crossroads. Year five, I called it concern for the church. When I started doing the research on the data and some of the numbers as far as how many people are getting divorced, how many people there are that are just totally indecisive on the issue, leadership type people, that they can't decide when a marriage is sinful or not, and they have no clue as far as how to counsel people. And then the number of people that are basically like into feminism, into like, if you're not happy, just get out. There's no like biblical references. It's like, oh, geez, God, help us out here. This can't be how this whole thing operates. So at this point, I'm feeling like I've overcome, really. My muscles are strong. Like I use this idea of running, but I mean, even when I started running in like reality, I noticed one day like, wow, I have a lot of like new muscle in my quads I didn't have before. Well, that happens with standing. Like you basically become strong. You learn what the tricks are, what triggers you, the lies of the enemy. You've seen it like thousands of times at this point. So it's nothing new. It's the same thing. And you can fairly easily shoulder the burden. I mean, with relative ease compared to year one and year two, it's not that big a deal anymore. Like I said, about the spiritual attacks. You're more able to understand the things that you're dealing with on the spiritual level, and you can more intercede for people. Now, at this point, God may start to have you minister to others. He may bring to you people that are in the early stages, and they need you, and you go through it with them, and you learn from them, and they learn from you, and you kind of go through it together. It's a little bit traumatizing, but it's okay. Like the ropes at that point, so you can help them. Like I said, you see the divorce rates in the churches. You see the destruction of families. You see how there's these agendas going on, these social agendas to basically sacrifice the family, how bad divorce is for kids, and how, the church is really weak on the issue, at least where I am living and where I'm from. So, you start praying for revival. The other hard thing could be you start to see friends who were there with you, groomsmen or bridesmaids, they quit. They just disappear. And that can be tough, but you know what? God has probably got you at the point where you can also deal with that loss as well. Like, it's hard, but it's not the end of the world. Basically, you have that ring on, and one thing that was really interesting to me, this probably started happening in year four even, there's this verse from 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give them the reason for the hope that you have. Well, when people see my ring, they say, oh, you're married. And I give them their story, and basically they're hooked at that point, right? No, I mean, I haven't seen my wife in 6 years. What? Well, what do you mean you haven't seen her in 6 years? Right? And they want to know what's going on, right? And so then you start telling them, well, you know, I follow the one that I follow, the one that I believe in. He says that we're to be people of our words. Yes be yes, our no be no. That we're to be living in forgiveness. That we're to be faithful to people. And we believe in things like love and vows and covenants. And that even if my spouse leaves, I have a covenant with God. Year 6 has been interesting to me. I entitled it a new surprise because it's interesting once you do all the work to rebuild your life. You kind of don't want anyone to come back and mess it up. And that's been my experience so far. It's like you're willing to be obedient to God, if He sets up an opportunity for restoration, but you kind of like only want it on certain terms, right? Like you don't want to go back to the painful marriage that you had before. You certainly don't want to go through a second divorce and have to rebuild again. And so for me, it's been a little bit of like risk management. Like, God, I am not connected with this person emotionally anymore. So, I mean, I hope the best for them. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get if they come back around, And it's like, God, I'm willing to do it, but I'm just telling you, you kind of get into some of that boundaries thinking, right? Where it's like, what terms and conditions am I going to want to have if they come back around? Because if not, like things are going good, and I'm going to just keep it on. I'm going to keep it moving, and I'm working on these other things. But you're still trying to affect the culture. You're still trying to intercede because you may really be wondering if you get into some of that salvation stuff, do I need to intercede on my spouse's behalf as far as their salvation, that they repent and come back to God, not come back to me as their husband or wife, but that they come back to God, that they throw off the hard-heartedness, that they come back into forgiveness, that they start obeying the things of God, that they come back into a right relationship with Him, and, move on to that well done, good and faithful servant. Those are some of the things that start to come into your mind that are much more pressing and important to you rather than, oh, well, I just want someone to hang out with. Well, you learn how to do life on your own. You have people, friends, you have certain relationships that you're not like gasping for attention, right?
So that's all, you guys. We'll see you.